Fatal Frame games generally take place over various time periods, with events in the past leading directly to the events that take place in the game, which is also set sometime in the past compared to the year it actually came out. And with so many events, diaries, anniversaries, incidents, etc., the timelines can get a little muddy and confusing if you're not minutely tracking everything. And even then, they can still get confusing. Fatal Frame 4 was probably the worst of all the games, however, due to the game literally taking place over numerous time periods, while also never really giving us set dates for anything. A lot of the timeline has to be worked out from character ages, the rare dates they do give us in a file or on a sign here and there, and then calculating all of that to put things in their correct order. Initially, the game was assumed to take place in 1980, and many timelines have worked from that. But with the remaster that came out, it became clear that this wasn't actually the case. The game takes place in the 1980s, and by all accounts, the present timeline of the game actually takes place in 1989, and not 1980 like was previously assumed. Without breaking out the rocket science, in the Asol Museum we can now read the sign that states he witnessed the Kagura in the 42nd year of Meiji, which is 1909 for us. We also know that the Kagura took place every 10 years, and in the current timeline it's the year the Kagura would have been held again, meaning that the game must take place in 1989. So, working off that date, let's take a look at the events detailed in Fatal Frame 4 and put them into a basic chronological timeline. Keep in mind, again, often these dates have to be inferred from the information we're given, and they're not outright stated, so there might be some errors and discrepancies along the way. But this is the best we can guess with the information available to us in-game. We're not really given anything to work off for the first failed Rite of Descent and Day of Tranquility. We just know that they happened long ago. So, let's start with the first dates we do have. And again, that's the good Dr. Asol's visit to Rogetsu in 1909, as stated in the Asol Museum. During his time on the island, he studies their masks and uses this knowledge to also improve his camera obscura. He even donates one to the owner of the hotel, feeling that at some point in the future, someone on this island is probably going to need its special powers. Then, on September 17th, 1909, Dr. Aso attends the Rogetsu Kagura, accompanied by one of the Guardians. He's fascinated by the performance and the beliefs on the island, and remarks in his notes, "As superstitions go, the idea that people are made of music is an attractive one." He becomes somewhat enamored with the Guardians, who tell him that his moon sound is pleasant, and he wishes that they could accompany him to his next destination. And in one of the photos he takes of the Kagura, the mask of the lunar eclipse that was made by Soetsu appears, thanks to the camera's ability to reveal the past. Something that will be important later on. At some unknown point after this, the hotel that Dr. Aso stayed in is torn down, and Rogetsu Hall is built in its place. However, to commemorate his visit, a museum to the man is constructed where the old hotel used to stand. The man who would come to run Rogetsu Hall, Haibara Shigeto, was born in 1926. 15 years after Dr. Aso left. Then, in 1949, the Kagura is opened to tourists in general. This takes place every 10 years in September, and it's hoped it will attract tourists to the tiny island and, presumably, help boost its economy as well. It's around this same time that Haibara Sakuya, the main antagonist of the game, is born. And then, in 1952, her younger brother Yo is born as well. Not much of note happens in the following years, but at some point their unnamed mother falls ill with moonlight syndrome and takes her own life. Then, in 1967, Ayako is born. As you may recall, it's very strongly hinted that she's the daughter of Sakuya and Yo. 2 years later, Sakuya performs as the vessel in the Rogetsu Kagura, and it's believed this triggers her own Moonlight Syndrome, and it's ultimately this moment that drives the entire story of the 4th game. It's shortly after this that Yo sets off for Tokyo to open his own clinic as well. While there, he conducts numerous experiments that result in the deaths of several patients, and catches the eye of local police. In 1972, the 5 girls that will eventually be kidnapped to serve as Sakuya's organs in the future Rite of Descent are born: Ruka, Misaki, Madoka, Marie, and Tomoe. Then, as children in the late 70s, all of these girls were admitted to the Haibara Infirmary with symptoms of Moonlight Syndrome, and it's safe to say they didn't have a fun time there. We're not given exact dates for most, but they were quite young, around the 5 to 7-year-old range when admitted. In 1979, Ayako was also admitted, although her family ties were kept secret. She was particularly sadistic and liked to torture the other younger girls. And it's around this time, sometime prior to Ayako's hospitalization, that Shigeto decides to perform the Rite of Descent in the hopes of saving his daughter Sakuya. He shows Soya, descendant of Soetsu, the photo that Dr. Aso took, and he realizes this is the mask his ancestor made that led to the first failed rite. This drives him to recreate the mask, but unlike his ancestor, he won't fail. Or so he believes. It's during the summer of 1979 that most of the big events in the game take place. First, in July, police open an investigation into the patients who have died under Yo's care in Tokyo. As such, he flees back to Rogetsu and goes into hiding with the help of his father. It's during this time that the 5 girls are all gathered at the infirmary as well. Misaki makes friends with Sakuya. Ruka starts to bud due to her father testing out his masks on her. Madoka, in particular, suffers great torment from Ayako bullying and torturing her. And Marie and Tomoe are also chosen by Shigeto to act in the Rite of Descent due to their same young age, although neither of these girls are inpatients at the hospital, but rather they just visit it regularly. A nurse from the hospital, Tono Tsubaki, is chosen to act as the vessel in the upcoming Kagura to be held on September 17th, 1979. On that same night, the Rite of Descent will also be held, with Sakuya and the 5 girls. Everyone gets to work on the various pieces needed for the rite, and on September 16th, the night before, Kirishima Choshiro, a detective from the mainland, arrives looking for Yo. September 17th, 1979. The Rogetsu Kagura takes place at midnight in the Temple of the Lunar Eclipse. At the same time, Yo kidnaps the 5 chosen girls and takes them to the Temple of Tsukiyomi. There, they perform the Rite of Descent with Sakuya as the Kagura takes place directly above them. However, at the height of the ritual, Sakuya's mask breaks, and both she and the girls collapse. At this same moment, the performers in the Kagura above also collapse, and Tsubaki, the vessel, mysteriously dies. Choshiro is present at the Kagura and watches it all go down. He suspects Yo will appear, but doesn't see him anywhere in the crowd, not knowing that he's at the Rite of Descent just below them. Choshiro then examines Tsubaki's body, despite protests, but remarks that underneath her mask, her face is all distorted. They're claiming she died of a heart attack, but he takes a photo and uses dental records to confirm it really is her. Now in a coma, Sakuya is moved to the Court of the Unhallowed, and the 5 girls are moved to the Moonbeam Well to be stabilized in the moonlight. Their observers are particularly fearful for Misaki, who they fear might snap from the mental trauma, or even worse, blossom. All 5 girls lose their memories, but with them now missing, their parents set up a search on the outside. In particular, Ruka's mother contacts Choshiro and asks him for help. Sometime before September 29th, Shigeto's assistant, Katagiri Shoji, hears voices coming from the Moonbeam Well, and he assumes them to be coming from the missing girls. Although he has helped Shigeto with his strange experiments up until this point, he also feels bad for what has happened, and anonymously calls the mainland to inform them of what he heard. With this new information, Choshiro searches the hospital once again, and finally finds the girls in the well on September 29th. They're then taken to the mainland. A short while later, a construction worker from the infirmary is found dead, having apparently taken his own life. In a note, he claims to have kidnapped the girls. That's the end of that. Workers at the hospital fear that at some point, Sakuya is going to wake up from her coma. Yo spends a lot of time looking at a painting of his sister and waiting for her to wake up. And Choshiro ends up quitting his job and becoming a private detective due to his dissatisfaction with how this whole case was handled. As for the girls, all 5 then moved away from the island, understandably not wanting to stay there anymore. At some point, Madoka's mother dies and she moves in with Misaki. And for the next 2 years, not much happens. But then, on September 17th, 1981, the unthinkable occurs. Sakuya finally wakes up, and the second day of tranquility begins. She walks around the island resonating and makes all who look at her blossom as well. Unfortunately for Choshiro, he just so happens to be on the island again, looking for her brother, Yo. And find him he does, right as Sakuya emerges. Choshiro is briefly saved by chasing after Yo, but on the hospital rooftop, Yo stabs him. Choshiro then throws both of them off the roof. Both men die. But they're not alone, as pretty much everyone on the island dies thanks to Sakuya. As far as we know, Ayako, Sakuya's secret daughter, is the only one who survives, and she does so by hiding in a secret room in her hospital room. Shortly after the second day of tranquility, the Oborumaru ship arrives to discover that all of the islanders are dead, with their hands covering their faces. Police fear it's an outbreak of some infectious disease, but with no evidence of foul play, they're truly perplexed by what happened. It seems the entire island just up and died for no good reason. The only person they find is Ayako, and she's so mentally broken that she's unable to tell anyone what happened. 6 months later, she also dies. The only thing she was able to do before death was call out for her mother. 8 years pass and the anniversary of the Kagura approaches once again. 1989. During this time, the 5 girls mostly drifted apart, and again, they don't have memories of what happened before they were found in the well. Despite everyone moving apart and on with their lives, Marie and Tomoe find themselves at the same school, and due to their shared experience, they become friends. But during the year of the lunar eclipse, the year the Kagura would be held again, they fear that their moonlight syndrome is returning. Through research, they uncover the Kagura and believe that it might hold some answers to their lost past. Marie contacts Ruka and Madoka for help, and with Madoka now living in the Asol household, she helps with what information she can find there. Marie takes up dance to be able to perform the Kagura, and Ruka records a song she faintly remembers that she feels might play some part. During the August full moon, Marie and Tomoe attempt to recreate the Kagura with what they have on hand. But, like all performances that are held without full information, they fail. Their mask cracks, and both girls blossom and die. they're found covering their faces with their hands like the Rogetsu Islanders, and this forces the remaining 3 girls into action. They have to return to the island and uncover what's going on so they don't die as well. And so, in September 1989, Ruka, Misaki, and Madoka, now 17 years old, head back to the now abandoned Rogetsu Island to uncover their pasts and hopefully not die like their friends did. And thus the game begins. In terms of the overall Fatal Frame universe, this would actually place the game chronologically after 3, which takes place in 1988, meaning that each game actually takes place after the one before it, and 4 doesn't happen first in the timeline like was previously assumed. At any rate, these are most of the big events leading up to the game in the order that they happened, given the information we're able to extract from the game itself, as well as official guides and novels and such. But what did you guys think of this one? Are there any other lore videos you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.